Hi guys, Tony Spera here, your moderator for Seekers of the Supernatural. I'm here at Union Graveyard in Easton, Connecticut. There's a lot of traffic noise, so try to forgive me for that, but there's a lot of traffic noise going on. But this is the graveyard that the White Lady's been spotted at many times. Many times. It's a small graveyard. I'd say it's only about an acre or 2 acres maybe. And it's very quiet here except for the noise of the cars that are not that far away. But Ed Warren, back in 1990, actually captured the White Lady on film. I'm walking inside the graveyard, which would be a no-no at night. If you do it at nighttime, you're gonna probably get a trespass ticket. But there's a tractor or something there that I didn't notice before. I've never seen one in here before, but this is the graveyard, guys. And I'm gonna just span around, and you can see my car there. Judy's in the car. I might surprise you, and I'll just walk up to her while she's in the passenger seat. Well, let me tell you the story about Ed Warren. What he did. He heard about the White Lady from Rod Vesey, a young man about 25 or 30 at the time, who was coming back from Home Depot. And when he was coming back from Home Depot, he's driving along Route 59 there that you can see. That's Route 59. It comes from Monroe into Easton. And he was driving back from Home Depot after the 4 to 12 shift. And I think he said it was about 1:45 when he was coming by here. And as he drove by, it was in September 1990, as he drove by, he felt the presence in his passenger seat. So what did he do? He looks over. He sees a guy, in his 60s maybe, with a short stubbly beard and like a crumpled hat, he said, dressed in like 1940s garb. So Rod did a double take, looks back at the guy, couldn't believe what he saw, looks back, the guy's gone. Rod turns back towards the road, and what does he see? He sees the White Lady about 35 yards in front of him, dressed in a white gown and a veil. And she's standing in the middle of the roadway, and she puts her hand up as if to say, stop. And he was about 35 yards away from her, going about 30 miles an hour. And when he did this, hit the brakes, he said it was like she just jumped forward really quick. It was like right there at the car. And then he said he felt a wisp of wind go by his right ear. And that was, he said, I knew it was a White Lady going through the car. He looks back at the road, and there's, on his side of the road only, is like somebody took a paintbrush and painted a red stripe down the road, all on his side, but it filled that side of the road for about 300 feet or so. It shook Rod up so terribly that when he got home that night, he awakened his wife and said, I can't believe what I just saw, and told the whole story. And he was sobbing to her. And his wife said, what are you crying about? And he said, I had an intense feeling of sorrow about this woman. I don't know what it is, but I felt really sorry for her and a sorrowful compassion for her. So she said, why don't you call Ed Warren in the morning? He lives right here in Monroe, because Rod was from Monroe also. He called Ed. Ed took an interview from him, brought the young man to his house and had an interview with him. And then Ed decided to try to capture the White Lady on film, and that's what he did. He came into this driveway here and drove in about this far, right about here. And he parked his van. He had a camper van, Ed. He set up his tripod with his, rudimentary VHS camera back in 1990. It's a big giant thing. And he set it up right outside the van. And he said he was here for 7 nights in a row from about 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. He was like sleeping in the van, and if he heard anything or whatever, he'd jump out. But the last evening he was here, he heard the whimpering of a woman, the sound of a woman whimpering. So he gets out of the van and looks. He sees the White Lady approaching dressed in white, through the gravestones here. And this is one of the gravestones that she flipped through, this one right here, the tall one. And he looks in the viewfinder to see, because he just turned on his camera. He looks in the viewfinder, he doesn't see the white lady, he doesn't see her. He looks back with his naked eye and he can see her again. Then he described what were like black little half-sized ghosts, like half the size of the white lady, maybe 3 feet high, if that. Like he called them, like they look like black poodles jumping on the left side of her, and trying to direct her away from Ed because she was coming straight for him. And then she vanished. She just disappeared. And that was something that Ed was like so remarkably stunned by, because this graveyard is only about 3.5 miles away from their house, from Ed's house. Ed used to say, I traveled all over the world looking for ghosts, and there was a fantastic image of a ghost that I captured on VHS film only 3.5 miles away from my house. But that's not the end of the story, because later, months later, Glenn Pennell was driving down in his pickup truck on Route 25, which intersects about 3 miles up the road, right near Ed's house. He's driving down Route 25 with an off-duty police officer, and Glenn was a fireman. They were responding to transformer fires that were appearing, that were burning because of a bad storm, a rainstorm. So as they were driving, they went by Stepney Graveyard. That is the graveyard that Ed and Lorraine are buried at right now. Stepney Graveyard. And they're driving by it. And as they're driving by it, the police officer, the off-duty police officer, says to Rod, I can't get it straight, says to Glenn Pennell, watch out for that lady. And Glenn says, he starts to say, what lady? When boom, he hits this lady dressed in white with his pickup truck. He jumps out of the truck. But unbeknownst to him, there was a woman in another car following the pickup truck. She pulls behind Glenn, starts yelling at him and the cop. Didn't you see that lady in the road? What's wrong with you guys? And they're looking around. They're saying, what lady? What are you talking about? There's no lady. We don't see a lady here. But Glenn said, I knew I hit her because I saw her. And later on, when he checked his truck, it had a dent in it from the white lady. So I had asked Ed, I said, Ed, how can that occur where she dented the truck? And he said, well, those transformer fires are spewing out a lot of energy into the atmosphere. And that's what a ghost needs to manifest. They need energy. That energy was so strong that this woman, this white lady, the white lady of Union Cemetery, now Stepney, was able to manifest to the degree. Here comes our car. Hold on a second. Truck. Was able to manifest to a degree that she was as solid as you and me. He hit a solid object enough that it dented his vehicle. But that's not the end of the story. She's been spotted so many times that you can't recall how many, but about 5 years ago maybe, Lorraine was still relatively okay, and she was in a diner with me and Judy in Newtown. And as we're getting ready to leave, an older gentleman came up to us. He was wearing a U.S. Marine Corps baseball hat. And he looks at Lorraine. He said, I haven't seen you in so long, Lorraine. He was in his 80s. And she said, oh, hi, how are you? But she didn't know who he was. She didn't recognize him. I didn't. Nobody did. He goes, I'm Joe. I'm from Newtown. And so he starts to talk about different things about the paranormal. Then he says, when he's walking away, he says, but I know all this is true. He says, you must get a lot of static. You must get a lot of grief from people who think there's no ghosts. But at the end, he said, I know this is true. So as he was walking away, I said, Joe, stop. Hold on a sec. Why did you say that? What do you mean you know it's true? And guess what? He told us a very similar story that Rod Vesey told. He said, well, years ago I worked at this like Acme Electric or somewhere in Fairfield. And he said, I was driving home one night about 7:30, and I was passing that Union graveyard up there. I said, I know exactly what you're talking about. He said, and as I was driving by, there was a guy in my passenger seat I saw. I said, what? He said, yeah, he had a pointy hat. He called it a pointy hat. He said, and the guy was pointing to the curb side of the road. And I looked, and there was this woman dressed in white. He said, I drove by, and I don't know if I hit her with my bumper or not, but I just kept going, and there was pink on my side of the road. So he's telling almost the same story. I said, what do you mean, you think you hit her? He goes, I don't know. I said, it was just so weird. He goes, I went about a mile down the road, and I drove back. I had to turn around and drive back to see if I hit anything. And he drove back, and of course, there was no white lady, no pink in the road, no nothing. It was back to normal. So that's the phenomena. Now, and behind this graveyard is a farmhouse, and this is where the Barberi brothers, when they were children, had seen a white figure flitting through this graveyard, and they were like 10 years old at the time. And I don't even know if they're still alive today. If they are, they're 90 years old or so. But ladies and gentlemen, this is the Union. I'd like to call it the Union Graveyard. There was a sign that said Union Cemetery, founded in 1760, but somebody, of course, stole it years ago. So, guys, that's the story of Union Cemetery. One proviso or caveat: don't go there in the evening time, because if you go there after sunset, the police will come and give you a trespass ticket. So you don't want to do that. But it is a very intriguing place to go to. But if you do go ever, be very respectful, okay, of where you're at. The reason the police went there in the first place and clamped down was because when it became known about the white lady, after Ed Warren talked about it in his articles in the paper, hundreds of kids went there and were getting drunk in the graveyard and throwing bottles, breaking bottles against the stones, urinating on the stones. So the cops clamped way down for any nighttime visitors. So don't go there. But that's the story of Union Graveyard that was founded in 1760. So, guys, that's the story of Union Cemetery. One proviso or caveat: don't go there in the evening time, because if you go there after sunset, the police will come and give you a trespass ticket. So you don't want to do that. But it is a very intriguing place to go to. But if you do go ever, be very respectful, okay, of where you're at. The reason the police went there in the first place and clamped down was because when it became known about the white lady, after Ed Warren talked about it in his articles in the paper, hundreds of kids went there and were getting drunk in the graveyard and throwing bottles, breaking bottles against the stones, urinating on the stones. So the cops clamped way down for any nighttime visitors. So don't go there. But that's the story of Union Graveyard that was founded in 1760.